What's your you don't see that everyday story? I worked at a high-functioning casino as a cocktail server a few years back. This lady came up to me and asked me if I wanted to see something cool. Me not knowing what to expect says sure, why not. This woman proceeds to pull a purple rag out of her bra and begin to unfold it. I start to hear little chirps coming from the rag. This woman pulled a baby chicken out of her bra in the middle of a casino and let me pet it. She then folded the rag back up, stuffed the baby chicken back in her bra, and told me not to tell anyone. I told everyone. What the actual frick? You're lucky. I would kill to see that. I just shared the longer version of the story earlier today, but to summarize, a person getting arrested while wearing an inmate costume. Go to dress for the job position you want, I guess. Neutering a dog the other day, he appeared to be a crypt tortured, that is, one normal testicle, and one not descended, retained somewhere in the abdomen. Well, we can still neuter these. In fact, it's even more important to do so, since the retained one can later develop cancer if left behind. So, into the abdomen I went, looking for that retained testicle, which I was expecting to find somewhere between the kidney and inguinal ring. Found the uterus. My wife and I were on the loop around Atlanta in bumper-to-bumper traffic. There was a Dodge dually pulling a flatbed trailer in the lane next to us, and on the other side of him was an S10 Blazer, who apparently wanted to get in behind the truck. As soon as the truck was past the Blazer, he started to change lanes, but when he noticed the trailer, he swerved back into his own lane, but he overcorrected. He got that Blazer up on two wheels like at a stunt show. I could see the drive shaft spinning. He held it long enough for me to turn to my wife, tap her on the arm, and say, "Look at that." She saw it. He set it back down, and just kept driving. I was like, are we in a movie? Must have been an Emirati expat. I saw a wedding being held in a parking lot. Instead of rings they had gold spike bracelets and the bride had a YOLO tramp stamp gleaming above her jean shorts. Preface: I live in the M Valley of the Midwest, so this isn't surprising. I was in Walmart and I saw this older woman, 65 years old, and she didn't have a shirt or a bra on. Instead, she took her very stretchy pants and lifted them up above her very saggy breasts, forming a sort of a jumper romper, and just went on her way. That's not something I expected or wanted to see. Sadly, this is not an uncommon occurrence. Not anywhere near the Midwest, and I have seen this at my local Walmart as well. I wish I did not see it though. I was driving home one day and as I entered my neighborhood, I saw a turkey in mid-flight, about 15 feet in the air, glide across the road and face first into the side of a house. It plopped down on the ground and just as quickly hightailed it around the corner and out of sight. My mom had a turkey fly into the side of her minivan while she was driving down the freeway, left a sizable dent in the rear panel. This was probably someone else's. You don't see that every day, but this one day was the hottest recorded in the city. I was walking down a secluded trail but had to stop at a bench just to cool down. Then this really tall black guy was sitting in a motorized chair with a foot cast. He was really chill since he was smoking a joint and asked if I wanted a lift, so I sat on one of the armrests and away we go. It was a short ride but he gave me a hit of his joint and figured, crap, why not? This has to be the most bizarre situation I've ever been in. We passed an old lady, then it hit me, like we're in the most affluent part of the city and a black and brown guy are cruising through this scenic path smoking a joint on a motorized chair. Just your average day in the city or something. In my imagination this entire scene plays out with jaunty background music. A coyote pup came out of the arroyo and followed me and my dog around while we were walking. They didn't become friends or have any wondrous adventures or anything. I once took the shuttle from London to Paris. First time ever doing so, or even being in France for that matter. As I was walking through the station, a dude ran up to me and started quacking like a duck. I still wonder how that dude is doing 2 years later. Tire flying off the truck in front of you, aiming in your direction. Hits a small pothole, bounces high, misses you entirely. Thank goodness. Must have had a horse show up my butt that day. Driving home one day down our old, suburban Atlanta street of ranch-style homes, my mom and I saw a full-butt peacock just walking down the middle of the road. My family's farm in Maryland had a tame peacock on it, Until one day a horse dying from lockjaw collapsed and fell on top of the bird. Trail riding up in a fairly isolated part of north central Washington state when 3 emus ran out of the trees. Horses were not impressed. Those birds lived up there for several years, menacing anyone who came around. Emus are more aggressive than their heavily lashed eyes would suggest. Watched a guy on a quad drop his hat, look back and decide to leave it behind. About 2 minutes later, some guy in a tan car drives up, swerves around it, stops, leans out of the car, picks up the hat, puts it on and then just drives away like nothing happened. Drugs. Once saw a man proceed to scratch his butt crack inside of his pants, smell his hand and then eat a sandwich with the same hand on public transportation. That was certainly interesting. I work security on the side. Watched a lady itch her junk, then reach back and scratch in a crack. She then sniffed her fingers, and then licked them. One of the nastiest goddamn things I've ever watched. My very first day in New York City, I arrived at Newark and was getting a combination of bus train to Penn Station. A family came running behind us towards the platform. A crazed redhead screaming. A voice behind her yelled, "Mindy, Mindy, you don't know where you're going." Then another voice yelled, "Where's Mindy going?" And Mindy finally replied, "There's only one train." During the bus ride portion of the journey, I saw police clearing up a crime scene of what looked like a mob hit. Chalk outlines, bullet casings, body bags, crime scene tape. Although I am led to believe this can be seen every day. Finally in Times Square a man approached me, put his hands on my shoulders and asked, "Excuse me sir, are you Jesus Christ? What a city, eh?" There's someone in a few towns over from me that drives a white lifted van. A whole butt van with probably one of the biggest lifts I've ever seen in person. Off-road van. Was at a hotel front desk in Dallas on a business trip. Turned around and saw a group of people in mascot costumes and I screamed. Turned out it was a furry convention, which I had to Google as never heard of it before. Then saw one in full costume by the pool sunbathing. Must have been roasting. One time I went bowling and a pack of furries came up when we were halfway through our game. Apparently that alley's bowling league had 3 teams that were comprised entirely of furries in full costume. We were just there on a practice day. I work security on the side. I feel like I could give you a different answer every so often. Watched a guy the other day going through boxes of men's shoes and sniffing them, looking for ones with a foot scent. When he found them, he'd get a little fidgety. Went to the back of the department with a few boxes and was looking around heavily. But there was a family and a bunch of kids around, and he left abruptly. No joke, the way he was acting and how he was positioning things. He was about to frick a pair of Nikes. It was some wild crap. Watched a guy bust out of the store one time with about $1,300 in clothes and right into the side of his getaway vehicle, which then ran him the frick over. Not ashamed to say I laughed my butt off. He lived. People crapping, masturbating, domestic violence, robberies, marriage proposal from a cracked out junkie, accidents. I've seen some crap. Literally. My family and I were coming back from church. We on the freeway heading home. My sister was driving, and my dad was in the passenger's seat. My dad had his hand outside of the window while grabbing the roof top. Out of nowhere we hear that our dad was disgusted by something. He brings his hand back in the car and sees that a bird had covered the top part of his hand with poop. Everyone started laughing and amazed at what had just occurred. It was a 1 in a million situation. The bird had to land the poop on my dad's hand while the car was going full speed on the freeway. I have been pooped on by birds 14 times in my life. I am definitely cursed. One time I was sitting at a light and my window was opened no more than 2 inches. Freaking bird pooped through the small opening in my window and all over my shoulder. Total WTF moment. It is very normal in other countries, but not where I live. I saw a person of color in a bus one day. It was the only time I saw a black person in my country, and I live in the biggest city, don't get me wrong. It wasn't the first time, but before it was somewhere abroad. I have a friend who's dark skinned, and when he talked about visiting Russia he said random people would gawk or pull him in for a photo like he was a tourist attraction. My 3.5-year-old son says this all the time, but about extremely mundane things. Butter on a potato? You don't see that every day. Car with lots of bumper stickers? You don't see that every day. $100 bill? You don't see that every day. He's ready to be an old man. I love it. Was in the tribunal talking to a friend. The new prosecutor passes by us wearing shorts and flip-flops with a fully dressed forecourt upper body. Morning, Your Honor, the bastard says as if nothing is happening. In shock, I keep looking at him as he strolls across the lobby. That's a power move. I used to work next door to a mini golf course, and the window of our drive-thru looked out over the golf course. One day I'm working the drive-thru and look out the window to see 4 people golfing in full fursuits. Once in high school I went into the bathroom to see a kid crying outside a stall that had a massive 8-inch long, black as the night, peanut spiked turd bobbing in the toilet. I still feel bad for that kid. Bruh, one time I went to use the bathroom at Red Robin and there was a huge turd that was so big it didn't even reach the bottom of the toilet. The length of it would have been gross enough, but it was the widest poop I've ever seen. The closest thing I can compare it to is a Chipotle burrito. The man who shat that out must have been in agony, like god dang. In the parking lot of a concert in the 80s, a guy with a big blonde fro stripped down and simulated intercourse with the windshield of his Chevelle. Then he dismounted and strutted around like a chicken. Then, more windshield coitus. Then, chicken, windshield, chicken windshield, chicken, ambulance. Driving a trailer when oh crap must have a flat on trailer. The tire passed me on left and I was like no, not flat. Pulled over, it was right tire gone. WTF. Never figured that out. My brother rolling a weenie under the bathroom as my cousin was using it and her screaming, why the frick is there a weenie in the bathroom? Because she had to pee. I was getting on the freeway on my motorcycle and a truck ahead of me drove over a 4x8 sheet of plywood. The wind from the truck sucked the piece of wood up in the air and it came flying at me. The corner of the wood sheet hit my gas tank and the whole piece bounced over my head. Walking down the street in London 2 years ago, a dog appeared out of nowhere and took a giant crap in the middle of the sidewalk half a block in front of us. Immediately after, a man grabbed a frying pan from a pile of trash bags on the side of the street, scooped up the mess, and dumped the whole thing into a paper shopping bag. A few years ago, while visiting family in the south of Spain, I live in the States, I was out at a bar with my cousin. His girlfriend's family owned a bar, and it was small but packed. I went upstairs to the only bathroom to go pee, opened the unlocked door and walked in on a FFM threesome in full swing. Button tea and everything LMAO. Immediately tried to cover my eyes while backing out the door and yelling lo siento, lo siento. My cousin, his girlfriend, and her mom ran up and promptly removed them, but I had zero desire to touch anything in the bathroom after that LMAO. This was also the first night I ever tried absinthe, and skinny dipped in the Mediterranean for the first time. Was a solid night. So let me start by saying last week at work I was watching some convenient cop vids on Reddit. Highly recommend. I call my husband as I leave the office, tell him about the videos and explain how I want a dash cam for some of the wacky stuff I see during my 55-mile commute. I'm about halfway home on Route 78 westbound, 3-lane highway, driving in the middle lane. I see a cloud of dirt kicking up in the median off in the distance. I was a bit confused trying to make sense of it. Then all of a sudden I see an 18-wheeler driving toward us in the median. Absolutely horrifying. He ends up driving head on in the fast lane. Somehow we all dodged the truck. I got a brief look at the driver's face. Sheer horror. Called 911 and reported the incident. No idea how it ended, but definitely not something you see every day. I bought a dash cam that evening. TLDR. 18-wheeler crossed over median into oncoming traffic. Had a turkey vulture swoop down and kill a squirrel right in front of me. And then not 30 seconds later, a red-tailed hawk came down and killed the turkey vulture. Hawk is going to town for about 5 minutes, when a bobcat that had apparently been watching this crap the whole time sprints out and kills the hawk. Trials of life. At around 3 AM, I saw a man rollerblading through the lobby of the Ritz-Carlton. I could not believe the hotel staff were just letting him get away with this, but no one even attempted to stop him. I ended up getting on the elevator behind him. The man was Jim Carrey. Walked by a white Mustang convertible today. A bit showy, but it made me think, why don't people just have fun with their vehicle choices anymore? Why don't people just have fun with their vehicle choices anymore? Because that isn't enough to justify putting up with the higher insurance costs. Bought a fairly new, still used, vehicle from the dealership, 2018. And as I'm trying to figure out how to use the touchscreen settings, I opened the owner's manual in the glove compartment. Inside the pages was a bunch of condoms, one of which was the ripped open package. I threw them out. I mean, it said it came with all the safety features. There is a deer in my town that stabbed someone with their antler in a moving car, killed them, survived, got shot with a tranq dart, lived. Dang, Bambi's live action remake is dark ASF. I was heading home from my job as a haunted house actor one night when I saw a school bus surrounded by police cars. This was a little after midnight BTW. It was on my same road going the opposite direction, and all the police cars had their lights on. I was so surprised that I forgot to pull over and the police cars and bus honked at me as they shot past. I swear I heard a noise like screaming coming from the bus. I asked around the next day at the haunted house to see if any of the other actors saw the bus when they went home. Nobody else did. To this day, I have no idea what it was. I would have been monitoring every news outlet for a week after that. Saw some dude get chased down the street in his boxers with some woman with curls in her hair and an evening robe. She looked furious. I stepped out the back door of my family's cabin to go for a leak, and 15 feet away from me on the back trail was a young cinnamon-colored black bear. He was just sitting on his butt, eating the fresh dandelions and clover. I was startled, so I yelled at him, and he was so startled he literally fell over and ran away. I kinda felt bad for scaring him, but also not, because we don't need bears lurking around the cabin 24/7. So I was with my family, mom's boyfriend, brother and sister out in a boat fishing. It was a fairly rough area, near the strait leading out to open ocean. Plus it was windy and overcast. The BF hadn't weighted the line enough and so it didn't sink. We saw a seagull dive for bait at the end of the line. It was a good 50 feet away. We saw the line being pulled into the air as he made off with our bait, only to drop it as the line went tight. We decided it was too rough to fish and went back to camp on the islands up there. Okay, I was in a Chinese restaurant in London. It had been fairly busy, but by the end of my meal with my GF the place had emptied apart from our table and one other, and of course like many people the other table hadn't noticed the atmosphere and gone quiet and was speaking quite loudly still. The first thing I heard when we started to speak in a quieter tone was at WSS, one of those days where you are on and off UN helicopters all day. It was said in the sort of tone that you might say you saw a friend in town. Just a totally everyday sort of tone, as if it really was mundane and average for them. I suspected at the time they might be journalists, but I wasn't sat in a position to get a good look at them to see if they were TV journalists or not. I was sitting in my work truck across the street from a power station. I was parked looking at my phone when there was this sudden pressure in the air. Before I had a chance to register anything, there was the loudest crack followed with an explosion of sparks and fire. Blue beams of electricity arched off the transformers and broken cables. I noped out of there as fast as I could and dialed 911 on the way. One time I was outside my mom's house in a regular suburban neighborhood in Pennsylvania and I just saw a peacock walking down the street, completely unattended. No nearby zoos for it to have escaped from on thin. Just a random butt peacock. The word you're looking for is peahen. This literally happened today. My husband and I were at stop sign and guy comes out of nowhere on a bicycle, holding a weed whacker, and there was a huge rabbit in the hood of his coat. I got into my car the other morning to go get my COVID vaccine. As I was pulling out, I noticed that I was parked next to the license plate that was sequential to my own. For example, I have plate ABC 1234, and the plate directly to my left was ABC 1233. I stopped, pulled back into my spot, and took a picture, because what are the odds? I was legit almost late for my vaccine just to capture this. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.